Okay, so you should, and it takes sometimes a little while to update around the whole planet, but you should see an opening screen which says The Art of Shiatsu, Shiatsu Course Design and Assessment, a webinar with Clifford Andrews and Annie Cryer. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a start and see what it's all about. Okay, so here's the introduction. First of all, I'm just going to give you a bit of an idea about how the webinars work, just in case it's your first time. And if it's not your first time, then just to remind you how it all works. Then I'm just going to say a little bit about the online course which follows this webinar. That's an asynchronous course. What that means is you don't all have, no one has to be there at the same time. It's a course that runs through the week and you can access the material whenever you want to. We're then going to look at the three main curriculum models. Now, why would you want to find out about them? Well, the three curriculum models are very central to the whole idea of how we design a course and also how we assess the students. So we're going to have a look at that in some detail. Then we're going to look at the whole issue of assessment, which is a very emotive subject. And we're going to look at some of the reasons why it is such an emotive subject. And also I've got a little energy work exercise for you to do at home during the webinar. So we can just explore some of the energetic effects of assessment. And then we'll look at three technical things about assessment, which we'll do straight after the exercise. And that will be the introduction. Okay, so let me just show you a couple of screens about the webinar system. How you can participate. These webinars are very interactive and there's various ways that you can participate. If you'll notice that you've got like a control panel which looks a little bit like the one on the screen. You can open it and hide it with a little orange arrow. You can also ask questions in two ways. You can either type the questions in the little questions type box, a bit like texting. Or if you've got an audio setup, in other words, you've got a headset, you can also put your hand up, as we'll see in a minute, and you can actually ask a question with audio, which is a lot of fun. Okay, let's just go back one more. All right, here we are. And this is how you can use the audio. There's this button here, this orange putting up your hand button, and that puts up a virtual hand. And Shakura, who's sitting next to me, who's engineering the session, do you want to say hello? Hello there. She will she'll feed the questions to me and Annie as we're going along. Okay, so that's how the webinar works. Now, there's another way that the webinars are interactive, and that is using polls. And we've got 3 polls lined up, ready, and they are designed for us to find out a little bit about you. We're going to find out who you are, where you are, and whether this is your first webinar. Okay, so Shakura, could you launch the first poll about, we'll find out who we've got in the audience. Okay, so just take a moment, have a look at the list, and just let us know. Whoa, okay. And the votes are coming in. We've got 77, 80% voted. Very good, thank you. Got a very active group. We had over 60 people registered for this webinar, which we're very surprised about. I mean, very pleased as well, because it's such a specialist subject. There's obviously a lot of interest out there about Shiatsu course design. Okay, here we go. We've got 90% voted. And would you like to publish the results? Okay, look at this. We've got 25% of the audience are either heads of schools or part of a regulating body. Whoa, okay. Thank you very much for tuning in. That's a really high proportion. 42% are Shiatsu practitioners and teachers. So if we take that together, we've got 67% of everyone tuned in is either a teacher or a head of school or part of a regulatory body. So we really hope this will be of interest to you. Wow, okay. Right, let's find out where you are. Let's find out where you are. Let's see if we're all in Europe or whether we've got anyone from America. Just like to take a moment again to take the second poll. Oh, it's going to be a very European thing, I think. Oh no, here we go. We've got some from North and South America. Yep, we got some from Australia. Okay, has everyone voted? I hope I've included every region of the Earth. If not, there may I only had 5 options when I set up the poll. Okay, let's see. Okay, so what have we got? So you can see now we've got most of us are from Europe and Scandinavia. We've got 10% North or South America, and we've got some from Australia. So welcome those of you from down under. I think it's going to be, I don't know what time it is.
Well done. It must be
Yeah,
7:30 in the morning.
it's got to be an early one, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, just
cool.
one last poll, and then we'll go into the body of the talk. I just want to find out if this is your first webinar. Let's find out how we've actually asked you how many you've been to. Oh, I see. Look at this. This is a surprise. Wow. I think it's because we've been doing so many, haven't we? We've actually done quite a few webinars now. A lot of you seem to be very experienced. Okay, should we publish that? Look at this one. This is interesting. Only a third, less than a third of the first is your first webinar. So there we are. We've got a lot of very experienced people. So we look forward to lots of questions. We've got some more polls for you later on. So let's just have a look at the next slide. Oh yeah, I'm just going to quickly say something about the online course, just in case you've not taken an online course with us before. This is what the screen of New Energy Work looks like. It's a virtual learning environment. It allows us to deliver online courses asynchronously. Now, what that means, it means you don't have to be in a certain time. At a certain time, you don't have to be online. You can fit it in around your week. So we really want to emphasize that, that's what makes it so flexible. One of the things that makes them so popular, the online courses. And what are they like? Well, we use a lot of video and audio, and you can see one of my favorite resources from this course is Mr. Bean prepares for his exam. It's absolutely superb video. Do you remember that one, Annie? Do you remember this one? Have you seen this Mr. Bean video?
I love that.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yes, I have. It's
Yeah.
really,
It's a really funny. And then we use quite a lot of audio as well. So we try and minimize the amount of time that you're in front of the computer. And I'll just mention a little bit more about the course at the end of the webinar. Okay, so before we go into the 3 main curriculum models, I thought we'd just take a moment to remind ourselves what a curriculum is. Okay, and the thing about, because curriculum and syllabuses or syllabi are quite often confused. And the difference is the curriculum includes everything that happens in a learning situation. And in the widest definition, it includes even the buildings, the assessment, the what people do, the learning activities, everything that happens within a learning activity or learning situation is called the curriculum. And that includes the hidden curriculum, which is all the things that are taught that aren't really explicit. Things like making sure you're there on time and you sit up straight when the teacher comes in and things like that. Yeah, so that's what a curriculum is. It's the widest possible definition. Okay, a syllabus in contrast tends to be more like a list of content. It's a list of things that will be covered in the course. It can also have aims and objectives and things like that, but basically it's more like a list of stuff really, rather than a description of all the activities. And here's the put it in a cupboard test, everyone. Okay, if you can put it in a cupboard, it's probably a syllabus, because it's actually like a list of stuff that you can put in a cupboard and forget about. If you can't put it in a cupboard because it's all to do with activities and what people are thinking and what they're doing and stuff like that, then it's probably closer to the curriculum. Okay, so now let's get on to the next slide. Let's see what we've got. Okay, we've got the 3 curriculum models. Now this is a fundamental 3 basic curriculum models which underlie the main developments in teaching and learning that have happened, particularly in the West, over the last couple of thousand years. Okay, so let's see what they are. Here we go. Okay, the first one at the top of the 3 is a so-called content curriculum. And this is the traditional idea of a curriculum that dates back to the Middle Ages, back to classical times. It's related to the academic curriculum. It's what you probably would have experienced when you were at school or at university. It tends to be subject driven. You know that from school. You have maths at a certain time, English, history, geography at certain times. So it's subject driven. And that's the first of the three curriculum models. The second one is the so-called product curriculum. And you will have probably come across this if you've never done any vocational training. This is different in that it's competency based, and we can talk about that a little bit later, the difference between the academic curriculum and the competency based curriculum. It's more associated with vocational training, and like in the UK, if you've ever done an NVQ, that's an example of a product based curriculum. And it's objectives driven, and this is important because rather than being driven by the subject, like what the teacher knows about geography and he wants to impart, or he or she wants to impart to you, it's driven by objectives. And we'll find out why that happened in a moment, because we're going to look at all three of these curriculum models in a moment. Okay, so, and then we've got the last one, which is the process-based curriculum. And this is more developmental. It's more based around individual development. And of course, that's an important part of Shiatsu. We'll see that in a minute. We'll have a look and see how important that type of curriculum is for Shiatsu. It's associated normally with progressive teaching and learning. And it's the special thing about it is it's learner focused. Okay, so that's an overview of the three main curriculum models. They're important because each one of them has a different type of assessment and a different type of structure. And what tends to happen at the moment in modern teaching and learning is that various combinations of those three are combined to develop a course, and that can have certain problems because some of the models fit together better than others, and some of them have inherent conflicts which sometimes occur when we're designing a course, as we'll find out a little bit later. Okay, so I just thought I'd just say a little bit more about the content curriculum. I've got a picture for you here. Look, this is an old medieval setting. You can see the teacher is reading out of the book. This is when education was a very elitist thing. It was mainly controlled by the church, and you can see that how it's teacher led. The students are all listening to the teacher. Let's have a look at some of the features of the content curriculum. If you've got any questions as we go along, by the way, please do ask. Okay, so the content curriculum is part of the ancient curriculum. It dates back to Greek times. It's traditional. It tends to be academic and subject driven, as we've mentioned before, and teacher led. Now, this is the interesting thing about it. The whole idea of the content curriculum was to create an elite. And we can see that in the way that the exams are set up, because the exams are basically set up, the assessment is set up in the content curriculum to basically weed people out. It's designed to create a small elite. And at school, what that means is it creates an elite that go on to study further up into university and beyond. And those people are kind of like filtered out and chosen to become the leaders or within a certain part of society. And that's really important. That function is really, really important. Okay, so that's the content curriculum. It's an old curriculum. It's traditional, subject driven, tends to be teacher led, and the whole purpose of it is to create an elite. Okay, so let's go on to the second one. Oh, assessment is by exams. Yep, that's right. Product curriculum. Okay, let's have a look at that. Now, this has got a very interesting history, the product curriculum, because it all came about in America during the 50s. And what happened was the whole of America was put into shock by the Russians winning the space race, because what they did was they put a satellite up before the Americans. And here's a picture of that very satellite. It's the Sputnik satellite. And that caused a mass sort of kind of mass concern in America about whether the country itself was failing. And so what they did was they decided to get the scientists, because it was the age of the scientist. They decided to get scientists in, psychologists in, to redesign the whole education system so that they could beat the Russians. And the result of that was the so-called product-based curriculum. And it was actually like a scientifically based curriculum, scientifically based designed way of learning. But as we'll see, it did have some disadvantages. Okay, so the space race was the thing that launched the whole, that started off the whole product-based curriculum. Now, this is the strength and the weakness of the product curriculum. It's based on behaviorism, which means that it has a very particular view of what human beings are and how they learn. And as a result, it's very much based on kind of programming people or people to do certain tasks or what's called competencies. And you've probably heard about this competency-based curriculum. And the idea is that what has to be learnt can be broken down into competencies, which can then be assessed. The teacher trains the learner, so it's still quite teacher orientated, but the teacher is kind of the teachers themselves are kind of working within delivering the competencies to the students. So the curriculum itself has quite a lot of rigidity in a way. And the idea behind it was to create competent workers at all levels of society. Now, the assessment is totally different. The assessment is criteria-based, criterion-based. Now, that's very different from the elitist type of assessment of of content curriculum. And the main difference, and this is very important from the point of view of Shiatsu, is that everyone can pass if they all can meet the criteria. So an example of that would be something like the driving test, where everyone can actually pass a driving test as long as they can actually demonstrate that they're competent to drive a car, kind of thing. So it's not based on weeding people out or creating an elite like the content-based curriculum. Okay, so that's the product curriculum. So that's the second one. And now we have the third one, which is this one, the process-based curriculum. Okay, the process curriculum, let's have a look at the picture. This goes back to Rousseau and his famous book, Emile, about education, and here's a picture of him. There are many more modern advocates of the process-based curriculum, including Carl Rogers, our very own Carl Rogers, who's another advocate of the process curriculum. So let's find out what's special about the process-based curriculum. Well, it came from Rousseau, and Rousseau was writing, during the Enlightenment, but his view was kind of like a romantic reaction to the Enlightenment. So what he was basically saying was that if we could go back to nature, and if people were given, students were given enough freedom, that they would find out and learn for themselves. So as a result, the process curriculum is often related to progressive education, any type of education that tends to go against society, as it is, and it's much more focused on developing the learner. The whole idea in the process curriculum is setting up an environment where the learner can learn, and that's where we get things like resource-based learning and modern techniques like that. So the teacher facilitates rather than delivering the content or delivering the objectives or trying to get the students to reach the competencies. The teacher facilitates the learning of the student. It tends to be more idealistic than the other two curriculum models. And here's another word that's interesting. The assessment tends to be ipsative, and what that means is rather than designed to create an elite like the content curriculum, and rather than trying to test for competencies like the product curriculum, the process curriculum is more interested in how the individual student is developing within their own terms of references. And as we'll find out a little bit later, that's very important for Shiatsu, because in Shiatsu, we're very concerned with development, developing the key, developing self-development of the student. So that's an important part of Shiatsu. Okay, so
Yeah.
have you
Cliff,
got any
can I
comments
come
about
in
that?
here?
Yes, go ahead, Annie.
What, Cliff, I just wanted to say that what you said about that most curriculum are a mixture of these three models,
That's right.
and especially in Shiatsu, we do have that mixture, which does have inherent conflicts when it comes to assessment.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. And I've got a case history actually later on, Annie, about based on the MRSS, the changes to the MRSS assessment, and we can look at those a bit later in terms of the different curriculum models. But I mean, I personally,
Yeah,
this is one of my enthusiasms, I must say. I think this is absolutely fascinating. When I was studying this, I just thought it made so much sense to me understanding these three models. And once you understand them, it gives you a completely new take on most of the arguments that you hear about education. Because normally what happens is the arguments or the discussions occur because the people who are arguing assume that that their view of the curriculum is the only way. You know what I mean?
yes,
So, and
yes,
we're
yeah,
getting that a
yeah,
lot. We're getting that a lot in the UK at the moment because obviously teaching's developed so much uh, over the last 20, 30 years, and we've got a very a conservative government that's literally trying to turn the clock back. And what they're doing, if you look at what they're doing in terms of these three models, is they're essentially trying to drag the curriculum back to the content curriculum, which is what they remember were delivered when they were at school. And that's
yeah.
really what's
That's
underlying
exactly
it.
right.
Yeah, that's what's happening. And it's a very unfortunate that they can't just leave the whole thing to people who actually are trained and know what they're what they're actually doing. But there we are. That's another subject. Um, um, okay, so look, and here we are. Here it is, an example of the MRSS in the UK. Now, just for those of you who are in Australia and North America, you might like to know that in the UK, before the schools became ratified, the only way to get into the register of the Shiatsu Society in the UK was to pass the MRSS examination or the assessment, which basically involved a terrifying day of going somewhere, usually London, where you'd basically have to work on an assessor. They would work on you, then you'd be sort of grilled in front of a panel. And in the early days, I was part of the assessment board, and I can tell you it was a very, very stressful event for everyone, really, for both the examiners and the receiver and the examinees, whatever, the prospective registers. Now that's changed um, because partly because the schools have now become ratified, but we can see how it's changed in terms of the three models. So MRSS stands for the Member of the Register of the Shiatsu Society, and I'm sure in the AOBTA in America and in other countries there's a similar type of registration procedure. It gives professional registration with insurance and all the normal things you'd expect from a registering body. Now, in the beginning, what happened was basically the examination was based on content and on product. So you do a practical exam which had certain criteria, and also you would be tested verbally on a whole load of content which was in the syllabus or the core curriculum as it was called. Now what's happened now is, because the schools have been ratified, is that the competencies and the content aspects of the curriculum are taken care of within the schools, which means that there's now a year, the so-called postgraduate year, which occurs after graduation, and that is completely process based. And we can identify that because the assessment, particularly, and the way the whole thing is set up, is completely ipsative. In other words, the student works with the supervisor in generating their own curriculum really for the year, and the assessment is based entirely on how the student develops. There's no external competencies or content imposed on that process, and that's a very, very big cultural shift in the way that the MRSS has been developed. And one of the problems that we've got in the UK is that the old system is running alongside this new system. And as we have seen from the previous slides, they really are an incommensurate sort of thing. I mean, it's impossible to have an equivalent assessment in a process-based ipsative assessment that's going to be equivalent to a content and product. So they don't really fit together, and that's it's just something that's happened as things have evolved. I mean, ideally, I think well, my own view is that ideally the schools should really be responsible for delivering the competencies and the content because they're set up for it. And we can look a little bit later at when we look at different aspects of assessment like validity and reliability, why having an assessment day, where a terrifying assessment day just isn't a really effective way of assessing anyone of anything really. So have you got any comments on that, Annie? No?
Well, there is an interesting move in the Shiatsu Society to address that, which will be talked about at the AGM in April. So watch this space. It
Mm-hmm.
may change, and I think that the changes are coming about because the incompatibility of the two models.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah. Great. I saw that because there's a debate about whether to put the MRSS qualification at graduation, and you can see why that would make
Yes.
sense because the PGY is essentially a developmental year. So it makes sense when you. I think understanding the curriculum models really makes it much easier to understand what's actually going on. Otherwise, like I say, it can all be very confusing. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Okay. So have we got any questions? Are there any questions from anyone? Have we got anything yet? No, we've got a very quiet group so far. You can always tell me to go slower or anything if you like. Okay, so look, I've got an exercise for you. And this is an exercise that's taken from the course, the online course, and it's to do with the energetic effects of assessment. And it's an energy work exercise. So you'll need paper and pens or pencils. So if you just haven't got anything to hand, then if you just like to go and get one, I think I'll do it. I think I'm going to do it myself actually. So I'll get my own piece of paper. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so if you get pen, I can hear clatterings everywhere. It's getting their pen and paper.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do like an energy work thing. I'm going to take you back into two different memories of assessment, and it can be anything. It could be a driving test, it could be shiatsu assessment at school, anything that comes to mind, and we'll just see what happens. Okay, we're going to draw two boxes, and the top one we'll put negative, and then the bottom one we'll put positive. So you've got two boxes. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the City Hall clock chiming in Norwich there, 8 o'clock, British summertime, just in case you're in Australia. um, okay, and now then I'm going to get you to listen to the meditation. I'm going to work through it with you. Okay, there's always a bit of a magical moment with these webinars, because when we do these meditations, you can quite often get this sense of the group getting in phase all over the world all at once. They really are good like that. And then I'm going to get you to draw your experiences in the two boxes. Okay, so shall we do that? So first of all, what we're going to do is just close our eyes. Okay. And we're just going to center energy and just clear our energy. So we're just going through, scanning through our body, just relaxing, getting into a neutral space. Okay. So now I'd like you to just think of a negative experience that you've had sometime in your life, a negative experience of some kind of assessment. And I'd just like you to imagine you're back in that place. Just imagine what it was like. Okay, now just see if there's any physical changes. Any physical changes in your body. Okay, now think about any emotional reactions that you're having. Just see if you can sense those in your energy field. And then any thoughts, mental level, any thoughts going on. And then tuning into the spiritual aspects of your field. Just see how that was affected. Imagining it in that negative experience. Okay. Okay, now just remember that feeling. Turn it into an image that you can draw. Okay, and then we're going to come out of the meditation. And what I'd like you to do now is I want you to get up and just shake out until you feel any residual effects of the memory. Just keep shaking until you've shaken them out of your body. It's taking me quite a bit of shaking. Okay, so now it's time to draw. In the top box, just draw the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual effects of that experience. See if you can get those different aspects into the drawing. You can write, obviously, write onto it as well if you want to. Okay, so we've got like a little sketch now in the first box of how you felt with that negative experience. Okay, so now should we go for the positive experience? So again, same thing. Is everyone finished? Yeah? Is everyone finished? Do you need any more time? You can always type in and tell me if you want some more time. I think that should do it. That should be fine. Okay, so here we go. Right, so now we're going to go for the positive thing. So again, we're going to just go into our alignment. We're going to relax, calm down our energy field again, just tuning in, closing our eyes, tuning into our whole field. Okay, and now we're going to think of a positive experience that we've had of assessment. Okay, and again, tuning in, get that, imagine you're in that position or in that place. Tune into your tune into your field. Notice any physical changes. Okay, and then tuning in emotionally. How do you feel emotionally? Okay, any thoughts going on? Mental level? And then the spiritual level, tuning into your spiritual body. How does that feel? Okay, now just turn that into an image and then open your eyes. You just might need a little bit of shaking out, but probably not quite so much this time. Just shaking out a little bit, stretching, and then draw the second picture. Again, how you felt physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Okay, so hopefully you will have felt quite different in both of those experiences. I know I did. Now, if you've got any strong experiences or questions, if you just type in, you can just type them into the questions, drop down question box there, and you can just let us know any strong experiences that you had. Or if you want to speak to the group, you can always put up your hand and we'll try and get you on air. Okay, I'm just having a look at those two drawings. I think the thing that strikes me about it is just what a responsibility assessment is, because it has such a powerful effect, doesn't it? Really, really powerful effect. And I think as teachers and course designers and assessors, we've got such a big responsibility to make assessment fair. I think the thing that I've noticed in the past doing this is that actually the thing that gives the most negative experience, I don't know if that's your experience, is when it's perceived not to be a fair thing. That's one of the really things that seems to hurt the most if the assessment isn't fair. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have constructive criticism or things that can help you grow, but it's when it's not fair that it really seems to be damaging. Yeah. Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
and
Yes, if you're just not
Cliff, you're going
prepared.
to
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Go
Cliff, you're
on.
going to talk about the assessment being valid and reliable,
That's the next
and
thing.
I think
Yes.
that's just an edu-speak way of saying it's fair.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. The reliability. Let's have a look and see if this is the next slide. I think it is. Let's just have a look. Oh, have they? Let's have a look. See what we've got. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. Narrowing the energy field. Yep. Let's have a look. Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, some of you had some very strong experiences. Jael Van Andel is saying that was awesome, from sad, jaw clenched and small to warm, glowing and expanding spiritual field. That happened to me as well. I had this very, very much more expansive thing on the spiritual level. Let's see. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Diminished by the authority, and that's one of the things that Helene has made a comment that the authority, and that's the whole fairness thing, is that if the authority can, I think the thing about assessment is it's one of the times when the teachers or the course designers have, it's where the power of the course designer is the most blatant, and that's when it can, if it's not fair, it can be. Um, and Debs has wrote in saying that it was very isolating, the negative experience. The positive experience, um, the positive experience was one time I wasn't being aware of being assessed. Oh, that's interesting. That would be formal assessment. And we've got Zora as well on. Hi, Zora. Um, Yeah, she's got some really dramatic negative effects. So I hope everyone had a very good shake after that exercise to make sure you got rid of any lingering effects. Okay, so here we go. Look, this is the issues of assessment, and this is where we can learn, or we can find out or explore the aspects of assessment that make it fair and make it unfair. And once we know this, we can we can evaluate or assess our own assessment and see whether we could do better in designing assessment. As we found out, it's a very emotional subject that can have powerful effects on all levels of our energy. Right, okay, now here's the first edu-speak or technical term about how things are fair or not. And this is the thing that's called validity. And that means, obviously, whether the assessment is valid. And what that means is, does it assess what it's supposed to? Now, this is really important because if I think back to the Shiatsu College, when we formed the Shiatsu College, a lot of the um, a lot of the weight we put on our assessment for our third years was based on a traditional examination. It's like exactly like an old type of examination, and I'm sure everyone can see. Yeah. And which curriculum of the three curriculum models do that type of exam come from, everyone? It comes from the content. Yes. Okay. And the problem with validity for the content based, because it's an academic exam for Shiatsu, is that it's not really what we do. I mean, how many times when you're practicing as a Shiatsu practitioner do you have to sit down and take a 3 hour exam? You just don't ever do that. And of course, as you probably can remember from school, the people that do well at those exams are people who've got good short-term memory, who are very good at exam technique. They tend to be the people who are more cognitively able. So what that exam does, is it's not a highly valid form of assessment for Shiatsu at all. And what we've been doing over the last, well, it's been going on for quite a long time now, Annie, hasn't it? Is we've been basically working on making the assessment within the school more valid. In other words, we've been trying to make the assessment closer to what Shiatsu practitioners actually do. And that involves use of simulations, use of continuous assessment, observing the students in a realistic setting. And I'd say that that's
Mm.
been a massive change, a huge change within the school, hasn't it, over the last
Well,
few years?
I would say that it's been a 5 year process, but it
Yes.
doesn't have to be like that for everyone.
No.
We're willing to pass on our mistakes to shorten the process for anybody who wants to emulate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's a very big thing to take on, actually, because it does involve a lot of work, doesn't it? I mean, you've been in the centre of it, haven't you, Annie? Because Annie, I'd just like to tell everyone that Annie has been central to the external accreditation of the Shiatsu College, and as a result, she's been involved in the whole process of it being externally accredited, which has involved developing the curriculum at every level. Um, so you've been right in the middle of it, haven't you, Annie?
Yes, so to speak, in the middle. I'd like to say now though, it's with all the work is so worth it. It's so worth it to get those assessment procedures right.
Yes, I think that's the thing. I mean, once you've actually studied assessment, and especially if you've done an exercise like we've just done, I think it becomes a really big responsibility in a way, doesn't it, when you're designing a course, that the assessment is fair. Um, it's And also the other thing is that you want the quality of the assessment to match the quality of the course, don't you? You don't want to
Yeah.
put 3 years in training up someone and then have a poor assessment, which yes, of course, at the end, as Shakura says. And I think that was the biggest weakness of the old MRSS exam, and that was the thing that upset people the most, was the fact that um, it's just unrealistic to put someone in a position like the old MRSS exam. It really tested mainly how cool you could keep for just a few hours, and also whether you had short-term memory of the actual material, so it was clearly not a very valid assessment. And that brings us on to the next fair thing, and that is reliability. And what that means, again, that's an edu-speak word, reliability, and it's what it means is it consistent? And what that means is that would the person get the same grade if they took the same assessment the next day or a week later? You know what I mean? Um, so the problem with the old style exams is that it so depends on what you're on so many things that can vary in the assessment, like you'll see in the Mr. Bean video, whether the questions that you've prepared for come up, whether they happen to test you on the things that you're strong at, whether you're having a good day, whether you like the assessors or they like you. You might have a personality clash, and that used to happen quite a lot with the old MRSS assessment. People just didn't get on with one of the assessors or something like that. Now, the thing is, and it's the same with the old Shiatsu college exams, they were highly stressful exams. And if you're having a bad day, or if it didn't cover the material you revised, you could get a really, it could be very difficult for you to get a good mark. And the thing is, with modern style assessments, to make them more reliable, what we tend to do now is go more towards a portfolio assessment. Because that always struck me as being kind of mad, really, that a student could have 3 years of evidence that their shiatsu was brilliant and even changed people's lives, and yet could be failed on the basis of one day's assessment. I mean, it was just ridiculous. The good thing about portfolio-based assessment is they take a much longer view, and they enable the student to be able to build up a body of evidence to prove that they have got competencies from the product-based curriculum, and B, that they've been developing themselves through things like self-development logs and things like that. So that's one of the main ways. I'd say that's probably that's probably the central way that we've increased the reliability, isn't it? Wouldn't you say, Annie? Portfolio-based
Yes,
assessment.
I would say that. And I would also say that it is very clearly the portfolio-based assessment very clearly gives the power back to the learner rather than the power being in the hands of the teacher. So it's got this kind of philosophical base as well as an educational base.
Yes. Yep, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Oh, hello, we've got someone with a hand up. Okay, that's great. Let's have a look. Okay, Helena, let's see whether we can get you on audio. I'm going to actually unmute you now, and we'll just see whether we can hear you, which will be very exciting if that's possible. Let's see. Okay, let me just see if I can do this. Here we go. Helena, can you hear me? Can we hear you?
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you loud and
Oh,
clear.
great. Fantastic. Hooray. We've got someone on the show. Fantastic.
There's a
Okay.
bit of an echo, so I feel a bit strange.
Yeah, there does tend to be, yeah. But you're actually
Yeah.
broadcasting around the world, Helena. People are listening to you from Australia,
Oh,
North
wow.
America, so isn't that great? That's so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I have the Shiatsu College in Dublin,
That's right,
and
yes.
we are in the middle of doing the assessments, and we're also in the middle of getting a ratification.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a new policy coming in, so we're going to have to do what Annie sort of did. So
Right.
I was just wondering, could Annie help us in any way?
Well, it's possible, definitely, yeah. I mean, I don't know if have you booked on the online course? You haven't booked on the
No,
online course, no,
no,
because that would
no,
be,
because this
yeah,
is the first one, Cliff. I was over
yeah.
with you, and this is the first
That's
one
right, yes.
I've
Of course, you were at
sort
the
of,
residential, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Annie would be up for doing some consultation work, wouldn't you, Annie?
Oh, brilliant! I'd
Yeah,
love
I'm
that,
sure she would
Annie.
be up for it. Yes. I mean, yeah. I
If
mean,
you
either.
send
Yes, go on.
If you can send me where I need to go on the web, because I'm a little bit computer illiterate. I had to
Okay.
get my husband to set all this up.
All
So
right.
if you can direct me in the lines that I need
Yeah,
to go to
sure.
get in touch with Annie or yourself, that would be brilliant.
Okay, sure. Well, you might want to consider doing the online course, because that's 5 weeks
Yeah.
of ongoing support, and you'll be with a
Okay.
group of as well. And I
Oh,
mean,
brilliant.
so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
might be really, useful for you. But
Yeah.
we'll get in touch with you after the end of the webinar, and definitely, Helena,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Really enjoyed it anyway. It's
Okay.
great to hear you.
Yes, great to hear you. Yes,
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
See ya.
Yeah, see you later.
Okay.
Bye, Helena.
Right, great. Okay, Helena was at our residential, which we hold every year in March in the UK, and it's a lot of fun. And we have actually got a teacher training stream now. So if you're interested in doing some teacher training with us, we've got the online course, the assessment, the curriculum design course, the art of teaching online course, and then we've got the residential each year. They form 3 parts of an online course, of the online and blended course. If you're interested in developing your teaching and your course design skills. Okay, so here we go. We've got 8 minutes left. Let's see what else I've got on this slide. Yes, coverage. And this is another big advantage of portfolio-based assessment, is coverage. That is how much of the syllabus or the curriculum is covered by the assessment. And of course, the old style exams were terrible for coverage. They tended to be very narrow, and they just covered what was basically, it was the luck of the draw what came up in the exam. Okay, great. So let's see, are there any other questions at all? All right, okay, we've got people signing up as we speak to the course. I'll tell you a little bit more about that before we close. We've just got about just over 5 minutes left. Let's just see what else we've got on the course. Oh, look, we've got another poll. Now, this is an interesting one. We've got a lot of teachers and people as part of the regulatory body. So let's just find out, have you had any formal training and assessment? That doesn't count this webinar, by the way, because I guess you could argue that this has been. But let's just find out the general level of Ooh, interesting. Here we go. Whoa. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. Yes, it's just as we feared. Okay, great. We've got 84% voted. Now look at this. We've got 60%, almost 60% of teachers and course designers in Shiatsu have had no formal training in course design or assessment. So there we are. So thank you very much for taking interest in the webinar. And you may very well like to follow it up by joining us on the online course. Let's have a look and see. So what I thought I'd do now is just spend a couple of minutes just thinking about Shiatsu and the 3 models. Okay, so we've got the content model. That tends to be the traditional methods. If you're tempted to give your students traditional type exams and you're thinking in terms of content, I better teach the water element, or if you think in content, you're probably delivering a content-based curriculum. Okay, now if you're more product orientated, then you'll be focused more on the students demonstrating skills. So you'll probably be thinking, now how can I make sure that all my students know how to do ... Okay, if you're thinking more about criteria that the students can show you, then you're probably veering more towards a product curriculum. And then if you're more concerned about self-development and the course you're designing is more about developing the students and you're focusing it more on the student, then you're swinging the course more towards a process type of curriculum. And as Annie mentioned earlier, in reality, we tend to blend the 3 together. But that is not without its problems, as we've been discussing in more detail in the online course. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more time to go deeper into the conflicts and the way the 3 models conflict with each other, but also how they kind of pal up as well. There's different ways that they interact. It's a fascinating area. And once we get deeper into it, then it allows us to actually be able to design our own Shiatsu courses right from the beginning. Okay, look, here's just 2 more polls. We've just got 5 minutes left. So let's think about the assessment that you had at your Shiatsu school, assuming that you were assessed within a Shiatsu school. And let's just see how well you thought, how fair, how well you think it tested your ability. So should we try that first? So we're basically evaluating the assessments that we've had within Shiatsu. What do you think of the assessment that you had in your Shiatsu school? Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Actually, that's pretty good. Okay, should we just publish that and see? Generally, people seem to have had a good experience. Half the people, 48%, had a good experience within the school, and 90% had excellent. So there we are, course designers out there doing a great job. 15% neutral, and only, well, I don't know, still room for improvement. We've got 19% rated poor or very poor. Okay, now what I thought was interesting, what would be interesting now, is to contrast this with the professional body. It's a bit of an open question because we're talking about different bodies all over the world, but let's just get a general view of how well the assessment of your professional body, how it tested your ability. Let's see how that is. People have to think about this one. Votes are coming a little bit slower. Interesting. Any more to vote or coming in now? This is very interesting. Okay, should we publish that? Now this is interesting, isn't it? Look, although there's still quite a few people who've had a good or an excellent experience, there's definitely overall the professional bodies have scored not as well as the schools. And that's interesting. It'll be interesting to do a bit more international research on exactly why, because obviously there's going to be a lot of difference in all the European countries and in America and Australia. Okay, very interesting. Okay, so now we've got time for review. I've got to do a review because it's a good part of curriculum design. Otherwise, I'll get in trouble with myself and Annie. Okay, so we first of all talked about the webinar. We talked about the online asynchronous course. The 3 main curriculum models: the content, product, and process models. We looked at assessment. We had an energetic experience of assessment. Yep. And we talked about how assessment can be fair or not so fair. Validity, reliability, and coverage. And just to mention again, just before we close, about the online course, what we're going to be covering is how to design a course from just a weekend up to a 3-year program, and we'll be looking at all aspects of course design, including assessment. We'll be here to help you if you want to improve the validity and reliability of the assessment that you use in your course design. And we're also going to have a week on how to market your course if you're a new teacher and you want to start teaching. And what we've done is we've designed it for Shiatsu teachers, prospective teachers, heads of schools, and assessors. So we're trying to cover quite a wide range, but we've got a lot of material, a lot of resources if you're interested in joining us. Was it Nick who mentioned that? Yeah, Nick said that it's worth remembering that traditionally many healing arts are taught on an apprenticeship model, which has its own a relationship-based model and different types of assessment, and that's very true. And one of the things we're doing in the course is looking at the traditional Asian or the Eastern ways of models of the curriculum, which fit interestingly into those 3 models that we have in the West. Okay, so it's 8:30. Just to mention again that the online course is asynchronous. You don't have to be there at any one particular time. If you complete it, you'll get 15 hours of CPD and CE credits. And the cost, just in case you're wondering, is £145 for the 5 weeks, which is about €175 and in US dollars, that's about $220 for 5 weeks. And it starts tomorrow. So if you'd like to email this evening, then Shakura will put you onto the course. Okay, well, I'd like to just say thank you very much, Annie, for joining us. Yeah, thank you very much.
Cliff. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
great. Yeah, thank you. I did too. Well, like I say, it's one of my enthusiasms. I think it's a fascinating subject, and it's really worth us reflecting on our knowledge of curriculum design and assessment. Okay, so that's the end of the webinar. I'm going to close the webinar up, and there is a poll. There is a survey at the end if you'd just like to fill that in, so we can find out a little bit more about you. And I hope to see you soon on another New Energy Work free webinar. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everybody. Good luck with your teaching.
Thank you. Bye.